Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Clint Crowe Real Estate Show. We are joined today by none other than Mrs. Ashley Mullinax. Hey Ashley, how are you?
I am good. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. I know we've been trying to get in here for a while, and like last week, Amanda and I were talking, we're both incredibly busy, and so it's hard to find time to get together and do this kind of stuff. Yeah, we don't get to spend as much time together as we used to. But
I know. I miss those days.
I know. I do too. So life was simpler.
It really was.
But anyway,
but we
thank
were
you
less
for
busy and less productive, and now
That's true.
We're very busy.
That's true. We probably had more time for poor decisions then too. So
yeah, that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, we may not get into that one today, but anyway, thank you for being here. Let's talk about your real estate business and your real estate career. You've been with us since 2011, so 13 years, I think.
Long time.
Yeah, long time. But
longest relationship I've ever had.
Yeah, there you go. How about that? But you started a little bit before that. Just talk about some of the early days and the beginning of your career. I think a lot of people know now kind of where you are in the real estate business, but talk about the beginning and your start and kind of how you've gotten to where you are now.
It really is true in real estate after being a seasoned agent. I think that's what it's called. The good, bad, and the ugly. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of bad and ugly in the beginning. And we've been trending for a while now towards the good. But I want to personally thank you for all of your guidance. And I know it was rough in the beginning with me.
It was probably rough for you too. I think we were both adjusting together.
Yes. So. Two very different personalities. Mm-hmm. However, I think one of the most important things in being a realtor and starting out in the beginning is just really trusting the process. And, it can be extremely scary. When I started out, I had two young boys. I had a daughter that I had just adopted. And I, like a lot of people, think I'm going to become a realtor to have a flexible schedule. And you find out very fast that there's not much flexibility with this particular career choice. But there are obviously a lot more pros than cons. But I think you learn as you go through that you can start to do better with your time management. And I do wish that was something that I had done early on. And that's one thing that now that I have a team, which I didn't have when I first started, it's kind of like, congratulations, you're a real estate agent or realtor. Now go sell a house. And you're just like, yeah, I don't know what to do because school doesn't really teach you that. So
yeah, isn't that funny? I tell people all the time, most any job that you get, most any career that you have is going to require a lot of on-the-job training. What you learn to get your license or to get into that career really doesn't teach you how to actually do it on a day-to-day basis. And
not at all.
I think real estate is probably at the top of that list as far as what you learn being applicable to what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely.
So, you're right. It is hard. It's slow. That's the thing I try to tell people all the time. There's been times that I've been sitting and talking with new agents that were thinking about getting into the business and we'll get done. Remember one time specifically that I was in there, Casey was in there with me and we were talking to somebody and we got done and she's like, did you want them to come to work here? And I'm like, I don't, yes, but I also want to set realistic expectations. It's not a complicated business, but it's hard work and it takes a lot of effort. I mean, there's nothing super complicated about what we do. Yeah, there's a lot of terms and a lot of information to know, but it's really about putting the work in. When I was policing and I was a detective with the police department, I hated CSI because it made my job so hard because everybody thought we could get DNA and solve a crime in, 45 minutes. And then I'm like, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
Now everybody sees TV shows, some of which I think we've been guilty of doing some of these. I know I did an episode where I sold a lake house in 1 hour and, and we only looked at 3 and it was great. And that's not real. I think we've not done ourselves any favors, but you've definitely come a long way. I know in the beginning it was a little tough. You talked about that a little bit. There were some lean times in the beginning.
Let me tell you, it was extremely scary. When I started in real estate, it was during the recession.
Yeah.
I've always tried to teach my kids, when you start something like a sport or whatever, you might get, a month or two into it, decide you don't want to do it anymore, but you have to stay committed.
Right.
To your team, and then you can decide to not do it anymore. And so it was really scary in the beginning because I was broke broke. Let me tell you guys how broke I was. So there were definitely times, some personal things that I was going through and being newly separated and then divorced, and the kids were young. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to leave a full-time job with benefits, to do real estate. And boy, did that take a lot of faith. But I take pride in the fact that, and this is what I tell a lot of my team, I'm very transparent. I'm an open book. I'm sure, as most of you guys know, there's not a lot that I hide.
For better or worse.
Right.
Sometimes.
But I kind of feel like it makes me relatable because, I know the struggle. I mean, in my early years, I was terrible with money. I was terrible with credit. Oh, you can save 10% at this retail store, oh yeah, what's another credit card, and it was a lot, and filed bankruptcy years and years ago. And I'm very open about, my, I guess, testimony, because I think it's easy for people to look at somebody from an outside looking in and say, man, she's made it. Or, I mean, I hear it all the time. If I had your money, I'd burn it. And I'm like, can you burn some of those bills? I mean, I think that is a real thing. People just assume, and don't get me wrong, I have worked extremely hard to get to where I am, but there were times that a lot of people don't know about where I would have a closing and my power was in jeopardy of being turned off, or, the rent was due, or, whatever it might be. And I remember calling Clint and just crying and saying, I've got this closing and I'm walking out of this closing, or I'm about to walk into this closing, and I got to have something paid by 3:00. And what if it doesn't fund until 5:00, or, whatever. I'm so grateful of the times that you were like, hey, well, this was before Tread and CDs, but, the alt signed or whatever. And I just remember rushing to the bank and rushing to the office to get a check, and to the bank, so that something wasn't going to get turned off. It's not something that I'm embarrassed about, because it's part of my character, and I'm able to, no matter how well I do now, I don't live above my means. My car, I drive a 2016 SUV. It's been paid off. I worked really hard to get it paid off, but I could rent out and finance whatever I wanted, or whatever. And I don't. There's going to come a time I'm going to need a new vehicle, know, but I just don't. I've really tried to do well about not living above my means, because it doesn't take much for, you don't have a closing 1 month, or you don't have a closing for 2 months, or one, everything's going great and you're out of due diligence, and then there's a financing issue. I mean, you can't, in real estate, it doesn't matter. I mean, you can't bank on it. It's not like when you're working 9 to 5 and, you can do well at your job, or you can not do well at your job, and you're going to get a paycheck.
There's two things there. One, this is something I mentioned with Amanda last week, and it's a quote that I know I tell y'all in meetings and stuff all the time when we're here together. And every time I hear somebody relate to that topic, it reminds me so much. The saying is that everybody wants to be where I am or have what I have, but do they want to do what I did to get to where I am and have what I have? And that's exactly what you just said. Everybody sees you now. They see what you have and what success you have, and every bit of it's been earned. That is, and I know I try to tell you all the time, publicly and privately, how proud I am of the success you've had, because you've earned every bit of it.
Thank you.
I mean, there have been lean times. There have been times when you have had to, like, we'd meet in the middle of the road passing checks back and forth, and I'm
Absolutely.
like, here, I'll go ahead and give you this check. You haul on to the bank, and taking on credit. It's been that. But people don't see that, and that's where I think that's why this was important to me, for us to have these conversations, for people to first of all know how dedicated you've been and what you've done, but also see something that maybe they might be dealing with themselves. And the other thing is, when you watch, you see commercials about investments, Edward Jones or some of these and all that, and they always talk about the prospectus and, past returns are not indicative of future behavior. That's kind of the way real estate is.
Absolutely.
Because what you did the last 6 months don't mean necessarily anything about what your next 6 months are going to be like. And it's hard to take the money you've got and enjoy it as much as you'd like to, because you're always afraid that you need to sit on it.
Absolutely.
At least that's the way I've always been.
No, and you're right. And, I have conversations with other top producers, not only on my team, but other brokerages. And I'm going to hit on a little bit of that in a minute too. But, we all have the same fear. years. What I would like to tell, especially young moms or, people getting into the industry with young children or whatever, my boys are 18 and 20 now, and my daughter is 34. Brock and Jackson don't remember practices that I missed.
Yeah.
Because I had a showing and I called another mom on the team or a friend or, hey, can you take them to practice? So I tried really not to miss games, but I would lie if I said that, I didn't miss ball games and such, whatever. You try not to make that a habit. But when you have somebody that is wanting, to see houses on the weekends or in the evenings, and that's when, your kid's ball schedule is or whatever, I miss those sometimes. And you do make the sacrifices. And now having conversations with my adult children, and they're like, Mom, I didn't know that you weren't at every basketball, football, wrestling, baseball. The mom guilt that I felt having to balance between, work and home, only to find out years later that my kids are great, respectful, productive members of society. And Jackson's graduating with honors, and I couldn't be more proud. And, Marcy has just been thriving. And I guess my thing to a lot of the agents are, you got to just keep going, and you have to realize that we are going to make sacrifices.
Yeah.
The great thing about real estate is you can decide, do you want to do this part-time? Do you want to do this full-time? And again, what you've always said from day one, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. So I do wish that people could realize that you're going to make sacrifices. You're going to miss some things. You decide what works for you and what doesn't. But I'll tell you now, it was a lot of hard work, a lot of tears, a lot of frustrations, a lot of us not seeing eye to eye on a lot of things.
Maybe once or twice. Like I said, we were growing together. We learned together.
But even the insecurities. I mean, I started doing social media marketing before social media marketing was a thing. And I remember,
Yeah, and I want to get back to that in just a second, because that's a big topic that I wanted to talk about. But you mentioned something about missing games and going out and selling, and that is so true. There's times we'd be getting ready to go do something as a family, the phone would ring, and it's, hey, I was wanting to see if I could look at this house. And I'm like, okay, well, when were you thinking? Well, how about now? And you run off. And thankfully, and you get that, and everybody else needs to get that. My wife has been so understanding. Nunu's so understanding, because she knows, and I would always feel guilty. I'm like, well, family people say, well, my family's most important. And she would always remind me, yeah, your family is more important. That's why you're doing that. You're doing that for your family.
That's right.
She still does that. There's times that even now when I'm feeling guilty about being gone to Atlanta during the week and doing the things that I'm doing up there, and I'm not home with the kids, a lot for the first 3 months of the year. But she reminds me, and I'm thankful that she understands this, that being home with your family and being with your family all the time is fantastic. That's what we all want to do. But sometimes you've got to be away to provide for your family. That is putting your family first.
Absolutely.
In my eyes and hers eyes, and I know it is in yours as well.
Sure.
So
and really, like I said, I mean, everybody's structure is different, but it is balanced. And I don't want to say this any sort of way, but I've worked the 8 to 5 where if I had a kid sick, I had to call in, and people that depended on me, whatever, you couldn't be there because your kid's sick. I mean, I just remember like having to call, and if I had a doctor's appointment or, just whatever. And that is a great thing with, being a realtor, is the ebb and the flow of whatever just works for your family. But you do have the sacrifices of, possibly missing things or this and that. But
on the flip side, you can schedule some of your showings, maybe instead of 12 or 1, you schedule them for 2 because you want to go have lunch with your child for their birthday.
Absolutely.
So there is some flexibility.
Oh my gosh.
Some less on weekends and evenings, but it gives you some flexibility during the day. And so you're right. It's about balance and trying to find that. And I think we're all always trying to find that. But you just alluded to something that when I thought about us talking, something I wanted to make sure we hit on. And that was kind of how you used social media to get where you are and how it started and kind of some of the feedback you got in the beginning.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I came into this industry, there were a lot of heavy hitter, older, very seasoned agents that I looked up to.
Yeah.
It was different back then. So social media was kind of more of the, I guess we call it millennials now, but that wasn't really a thing, back then or whatever. But early on, I started following a friend of mine who had a successful real estate company in, I think it was Tennessee or whatever. And he and his wife are still doing very well. But he had started a little bit of social media. I just remember following him. And I mean, again, this was 2011, 12. Anyway, so I just got this sold sign, and then I started the hashtag sold. Well, I shouldn't say started, but you know what I mean? Like around in this community, I mean, there just weren't people doing that, but I was all over Facebook. It was little things about my life, but then it was a lot of real estate. I had quite a lot of critics and a lot of this and a lot of that, or at least in my mind, and perception's reality, right? And so I remember coming to you and really feeling a bit of insecurity about that and, crying. And I'm like, people are talking about me and they're making fun of me about this sold sign and social media marketing. And I'm on Facebook too much posting this and that or whatever. And, I want to send a card to all those people and say,
Yeah. Thanks.
See?
Thanks.
I mean, again, I don't try to say this to be condescending, but it became a trend. And, people now hold up their signs, but people weren't doing it back then. And I just, and so now, but I do tell people, okay, because I have some agents on my team throughout the years and they're like, well, now everybody's doing this. And, they get frustrated. And I'm like, it's okay. Find your niche. Find something else that, if everyone else now is holding up signs, or whatever. And, then everyone started, I did the hashtag Ashley Sells Fast. Now everyone has a hashtag with their, it's great. I mean, I love it. Like I was never one to be like, now everybody's doing it. I think it's great. But in real estate, what do you say? It's ever evolving. Like every day is different. And I'm like, find something else that works for you. If you're a dog lover, market that way. And you're going to attract people and your sphere that's different than, what I do. And that's another thing we've always talked about is, Henry County and Jackson Lake and, the surrounding counties. And everybody's like, well, everybody knows everybody. Well, everybody does know everybody, but you're still going to know people that I don't know. And you're still going to you can still build a sphere that's different than mine, even though we have a lot of mutual friends, but, kind of find your niche. So it's funny to look back at, how I was then and now, but social media was amazing for me. And I tell people, work it, but use it correctly. Yeah. Keep your political standpoints off of there, be professional.
Right.
And that was another thing, I can say, because again, I'm an open book. There were times that Clint would call me and say, get that crap off Facebook right now. I was having a venting moment about something or whatever. And he's like, get it off. And I would be like, you don't tell me what to do. And he's like, just trust me, get it off right now. And I'm like, and then I would, take it down, and now it's like when you type it all out and then you're like, okay, God, and then you delete it all. You delete it all. But I'm grateful for that because, again, that was a growth, thing because I needed to realize that what I needed to post needed to be relevant and professional. And, there's a time and a place. So I just tell people, whatever it is that you're sharing or passionate about or whatever, stay relevant with that. But, Facebook really doesn't need to be the place, or Instagram or social media where you share things. Because let me tell you, one thing that I've learned about is this is a people industry, and all of the people that you're going to be working with and selling houses to, don't forget why you got into this. And if your passion really is people and helping them own a piece of the, American dream, homeownership is, I'm just so passionate about that. But it doesn't matter about some of the other things that some people get so worked up about. The presidents aren't arguing on social media about me. They don't even know who I am, right? So, or this or that or whatever. So, I do tell people, be careful what you do, even if not on social media, conversations, this, that, because everybody, no matter who you are, deserves to be a homeowner if that's what they want. And so I think that's important, is to be cognizant of why you got into it and let that passion show and don't get caught up on the BS that's not going to matter in a year or two or 5 years down the road, because it doesn't.
It's so funny because when you were talking about, people are talking about me and said, I post too much about real estate and I'm going to stop posting so much. I said, don't you dare.
Post more.
They're doing exactly what you want them to do. They're thinking about you and they're thinking about real estate. And, they may be making fun of you, but at least they're talking about you and they know what you do.
I do contribute a lot of my success to I mean, obviously to God, but, to social media, because it's a very good way, effective way to, get your name out and to, for people sharing your listings and this and that. And don't be ashamed to talk about yourself. What areas do you, where do your kids go to school? Or, again, the things that you're passionate about, because that's really, people are watching.
And that's
even your haters are watching.
That's exactly right. Sometimes they're watching more than anybody else.
That's right.
But that's really what kind of started me on the idea of even doing this.
Yeah.
It's trying to stand out. There are so many voices out there on social media about real estate. There's so many people in the industry, right? And I think there's business for everybody if you're willing to work and do the work, because people are going to connect with you differently than they might connect with somebody else. This is a personal relationship business.
Sure.
And word of mouth has always been the best. And social media is now 2024's word of mouth.
Yeah.
This is how people communicate. This is how people tell other people about stuff, is by sharing stuff on social media. So you got to let people know who you are. They're going to do business with people they trust and that they feel they have a connection with. And we've all seen it. Somebody that you may know in the business and they're maybe not, and you're like, wow, how'd they get a listing? Like, really? They got a listing?
Right.
Well, somebody loves them. They got a mom, an aunt, a grandma, somebody is like, well, I know they're not great, but I love them, so I'm going to let them list my house.
Right.
That's really what it's what it's about. And that's why I wanted to get on here and talk about things and let people connect with folks and try to find a different way, maybe a new way to connect with folks and to get them to know about who we are. I talk about all the time our agents. The thing that I think the company's fantastic, and I think it's fantastic because of the people.
Yeah.
Like, we have got some of the best people in the company, and it's really a lot of fun to be there. We have a really good time, but we take what we do seriously.
We do.
Maybe not ourselves so seriously sometimes.
Right. Yeah. I think we have a good balance. We cut up and play around, but but we also we do take what we do very seriously. And I'll tell some agents out there that are struggling right now, maybe you're on the fence, like, do I want to stay in this and keep putting money into it? And I just really feel like biblically, and what has kept driving me over the years, is I truly believe that He's going to continue to bless you if you're not idle. And if you got into this industry for the right reason, and your heart we're all gonna make mistakes. None of us are perfect.
We've had some expensive seminars, I like to call them, when you have to contribute some of your commission to fix something.
But you don't do it again.
No, you don't do that again.
I will tell you though that one of the main things is I wish I could speak to everybody individually that are first year agents and to really just say, keep going. Keep going.
Yep.
There's going to be frustrations. It is very expensive to be a realtor. So many people just think, oh, I'm going to put a sign in the yard and a lockbox. It is extremely expensive, but it's extremely rewarding. Your time management, your financial, really just the beginning of the year. We're just first couple of days into February, sit down if you haven't and plan out, your quarters. Even as something as simple as saying, these are my wants, these are my needs. But investing back in your business, I think, is what a lot of realtors don't do as much as they should. And I think some of those are the ones that are no longer in the industry, because they're, that was one thing that in the beginning I really had to learn was when you have that $5,000 commission check, if you're not allocating funds.
That's not all net profit.
That's correct.
That's not all net profit. And that's, that's why we do the business planning class every year that I do for the agents in December. And there's a lot of technical things with it, and a lot of, some things that we have through Century 21, some different things, some business planning tools and different things that we can use that are really technical. Like, you can get down to the nuts and bolts of every dollar you spend and plan it out, and then back into what amount of business you need to generate based on your historical commission split and average sales price. We could do all that.
Right.
But the biggest thing I try to hit, and the biggest takeaway I want them to get every year, is to remind them that they are an entrepreneur. It's their business. They are running a business. They're running their own business. And so that commission check that they get, that's not all net profit. Some of that needs to go back into investing in your business to grow your business.
Absolutely.
And that's a good way to look at it. I know that you've come a long way.
For sure. If my commission check was $5,000, I'm sure that I was spending $5,001. and now it's like, but yeah, I mean, and I'm going to be honest with you. One thing that, I contribute obviously a lot of my success to you, Clint, and you've always been an amazing mentor, and I've always had mad respect for you. But
well, I appreciate that. But you've done the work, so I can't do that for you.
But to kind of circle back to what I'm saying is that I feel like whether you're first year, second year, third year agent, maybe first month, maybe just brand new got your license, go ahead and implement some of these systems now. Yeah. Because it is much easier to do it and to do it early than to try to go back 5 years later or 3 years later and say, man, I should have been doing this, even from a team standpoint, do you want to be an individual realtor? Do you need a team? Do you need a team that is more coaching? Do you need a team that's more training? There's different things. And, one thing a lot of people don't know about me, I'm very good friends with other team leaders that are, outside of our brokerage. And, I think people get caught up in this whole competition game and, this and that. And one thing I've taken pride on is, we all have to work together and be respectful, but it's okay for you to have friendships and lean on, mastermind, pick each other's brain, and don't look at it like, I remember people used to always say, what's your secret sauce, Ashley? Or, that was a thing back in the day or whatever. And I remember coming to you and being like, well, so-and-so, wants to have a meeting with me. And I mean, what if I say something and then they go and do it. And you're like, Ashley, it's okay. And now I see that. And I'm like, I tell everybody like, try this because, I'm going to come in contact with different people. But
that's the thing, and I use, especially now since we're coming into the Super Bowl, one of my favorite analogies, and I got a bunch of them. You know that. You've heard all of them repeatedly. Sorry. Well, they're good. You stop making faces at me.
50%.
Okay. That's not bad. Batting 500.
Batting 500.
Okay, yeah. Okay. The Atlanta Falcons could have the playbook of the Kansas City Chiefs, but they would not have the success of the Kansas City Chiefs because they don't have the players
or Taylor Swift
and the skill set or Taylor Swift that the Kansas City Chiefs have.
Right.
And that's what I would always tell you when you say, well, I'm worried they're gonna find out what I do. Like, there's no big secret to what you do.
Right.
Sorry, there's no big secret.
Right.
It's who you are.
Right.
Like, they could try to do everything that you do, but it won't be the same because they're not you.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's where I have friends with other brokers and other folks in the business. And, sometimes an agent is going to be right for us. And I think we're right for a lot of people. There's a lot of people out there now that we would be right for, and I'd love to talk to them.
Yes.
But there's also going to be times that somebody else is going to be right for them. That it's going to be the perfect fit. That they're not going to need what we're given.
Yeah. I will tell you another thing is when we went from being that small mom and pop, brokerage, and I think there was 6 people when I joined with you.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. Anyway, and I just remember, being Crowe Realty for so long, and then you came to me and said, hey, I really found, I've done some research, and if you know Clint Crowe, he researches everything, like it's unnerving sometimes. Anyway, but he's like, I found this brand, and he was like, I want to talk to you about it before, we make a decision. And I'll tell you, at first I was, a little pouty about it, and I was like, Century 21, like we're just
a little pouty,
a lot pouty maybe, okay, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. The point of the matter is now I can't say enough good things about the brand, and even being a top producer and still getting leads off of just the brand. I mean, I'll never forget, and it happens more often than not, that people will call and say, hey, I don't know who Ashley Mullinax is, but I've only ever used Century 21, and I want a Century 21 realtor to come out and speak with me and sell my home. And you couldn't have told me back then when, we were going to make that big change, and I was kicking and screaming and saying, no, and now I'm like, why didn't we do it sooner?
Yeah, and that, it was probably one of, if not the hardest decision I've ever made with the company. Because, Crowe Realty was my parents and I started it, but it was my baby.
For sure.
I designed the signs, the logo, the color scheme, all the stuff because Mom and Daddy were. I'd learned so much from them my whole life being around the business about doing the business, but not really the company side. That was something we kind of went in together, and I really wanted to take it and turn it into something.
By the way, gold and black looks much better on me than blue and green.
I see what you're doing there. I like it.
I actually did, when I planned this morning, this was more of a February Valentine's-y, but now I see how,
I was thinking of you.
Yeah. Where you?
I was thinking of you when I was thinking of Century 21. But Crowe Realty, I think, had gone as far as we could really take it that way. And this area was growing in the entire metro Atlanta area, and now we're here in Henry County and South Metro area of Atlanta and Jackson, and now down in Macon, in that office down there.
We had a lot of Macon, Forsyth.
And so the area we work in was growing so much with people who just didn't know who we were. They didn't know our brand. I never wanted to have the agents be at a competitive disadvantage when they went into a listing appointment or a buyer consultation. Sure. And I couldn't efficiently, as far as price goes, I didn't have the economies of scale to get the tools that I thought we needed, that y'all needed to be successful, or as successful as I wanted you to be. I didn't have that as an independent. I talked to a lot of folks, but I'll tell you, Century 21, they got it when I talked to them, because it is about, being experiential and not transactional, which is the way we've always done the business. And again, that's not perfect for everybody, but we are relational. We love people. That's the way we want to do the business, is to build relationships with people. Century 21 fit that perfect. And the tools they have that you can get for pennies on the dollar compared to what you'd have to go out and pay for them outside, I think it's a great value. And I'm thankful that you were willing to stick with me and take a chance on my thoughts of what was the right thing to do. And I'm also glad that it worked, because that would have been unfortunate had it not.
True. And I have always trusted you, and you haven't steered me wrong yet. And I forgot that this is being recorded, so I shouldn't have said that out loud. But anyway,
I appreciate that. I will save that for eternity.
But I do remember distinctly, we had an agent a couple years ago that had an opportunity. Well, it was before we became Century 21, and had an opportunity to team up with a big builder. And he said, I want you. I like you. You have the look, you have the, charisma, you have it all, but you are with, you're not with a big brand. He felt like that was going to be something that, and I don't know if you remember that.
I do, very clearly.
Yeah. And even though that's not why we did it, the way of the world now is people are going to the internet, more than, back in the day, we had the real estate book. There was actually a book.
There was a book.
And there were houses in the books, and you drove around, and there was a tom-tom, and it might work and it might not. And,
you take a picture with a 35 millimeter camera and have film developed.
Absolutely.
And send those pictures to the MLS. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Really efficient.
But now everyone's going to the internet. I'm really grateful of, the brand. And I'll tell you, I haven't missed a single dollar that, people say, well, I'm not paying into a franchise. And that was my thought. And now I'm like, it hasn't affected my bottom dollar to the negative. If anything, it's only helped, because I have had real estate listing appointments and buyers, but now having that competitive edge. And don't get me wrong, my listing presentation is on point, but
it's very good.
But it is very helpful. And I'll tell you, for those that are out there saying, the fees or whatever, I can honestly say that I haven't missed any money.
It's an investment in your business, right?
Absolutely is.
If you're going to get to a certain level, you're going to pay for it one way or the other.
Sure.
And this is a lot more economically advantageous. This way, when you pay some royalties and stuff like that, but you pay it as a percentage only when you sell something. So you don't have to go out and pay up front for all of these things and tools. And there's trainings and the brand.
Classes, there's hybrid, but there's, so many online, and there are some places that you have to go, and you have to sit and do some of these classes for some of these other brokerages for a long time. Then you can start to sell. Well, the Century 21 brand, I can do it in the comfort of my home in between going out and having appointments, right? So I'm out in the field, but I'm still able to make time, and your time management and your business planning on, because it really is a thing. I mean, I wasn't doing it for so long in the beginning, and I look back and I'm like, that was a weakness. I should have been doing some of that, and I didn't realize how important it was because I didn't have somebody mentoring me until I got with you. And you're like, Ashley, there's got to be some structure, and we know that I've not always been the most structured.
We all have things that is maybe not the best for us. I'm a little scattered sometimes too. I got a lot of ideas. Implementation is sometimes stuff that, and so I've got people who are really good at doing that part to help me, who are way better than me.
Absolutely.
Ever. You've been able to find the same now, people that, your talent is people.
Sure.
Your skill set that God's gifted you with is being able to connect with people and relate to people.
Absolutely.
And do it quickly, which is so important in this business, to build a relationship quick with people. But on the backside, it wasn't always maybe the paperwork and the transaction management.
Maybe the paperwork.
And maybe. And I'm being kind. I'm trying to be kind. And the structure wasn't there, but now you've got that, and it's made you so much more successful.
And I'm
because
not perfect. I mean, again,
none of us are.
No, and I think that's another thing is, to some of you agents that, again, are stuck or whatever. Like, you don't have to be perfect. I think we get hung up thinking that our clients expect us to be perfect, but I tell my team, they don't know. Yeah. Right. When I bought my first house, if my agent messed up, I wouldn't have known. I wasn't a realtor. I had no idea. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. I do think that this is a very detail oriented business, and we are dealing with people's money and
the most important purchase they're ever going to make. For the most part.
But I just say that if there was a way that I could connect to everybody, and just to say, as a new agent, or whether you're 4 years in the business and you're still not to where you want to be, you don't have to join my team to call me or text me and say, hey, Ashley, next time you're in the office, can I come by? Yeah. And I have there are several people in the brokerage that aren't on the team, but they will text me and say, hey girl, you got a few minutes? And an hour later, they're walking out and they're like, thank you. That's I never would have.
So awesome about the company is everybody's willing to help everybody, and I've worked.
It's insane.
I love it really hard to try to cultivate that environment, and that's what I've wanted it to be. Whether or not you're ever actually going to get there, you never really know. It's not that easy to do, especially in a competitive business like we have. But within our walls, the competition just isn't there.
Not there.
There's so much camaraderie, and
I'm
thankful that's there's going to be times. Look, we're all fishing in the same pond. There's going to be times somebody, but the way it's handled and the way the professionalism that our agents handle those kind of things with, and the bond and the joy they get from helping each other is really, and you've been a big part of that. And I'm really appreciative of that. Before we run out of time, I want to talk a little bit more about the team. When I first decided my mom and dad were going to retire and we're going to venture out, you and I kind of partnered up and said, hey, we're going to run this team together. We're going to do the same. We're going to sell houses. Yeah. And we did.
We sold a lot of
houses.
We
had a lot of success.
We really did.
It got to a point to where, for me, when the babies came along, our two youngest, Casey and Holland, came along, there needed to be some structural change in my life. And so I decided to kind of move away from really selling and say, I'm going to try to grow the company. And do the thing. And you took the team and just took it to levels that I never even thought were possible. And I want to congratulate you, because for the last couple of years, y'all have had the number one team for the entire Century 21 brand in the state of Georgia.
Thank you.
And that is a big deal. And if I knew which one of these buttons, if I could remember which one did the applause soundtrack, I would hit it for you. But I don't remember which one it was, and I'll hit all of them, and nobody wants to hear that. So, but it's been incredible. And so I think that you have done a great job at building your team. And again, I just can't get over the success that you've had. I want to say that I always knew you were going to be able to do it. I always knew you had the capability of doing it, whether or not I knew you were actually going to do it or not.
I'm pretty sure that the actual conversation, if we're really being real, when we first partnered up together, and you said, you're going to be the one that I go to arbitration with first.
Like if anybody gets my license taken, it may be you.
Right, but it wasn't.
No, it was not. Not yet.
Not at all. We laugh about that and joke about that, but there were a lot of times that I called you at 10, 11 o'clock at night, dealing with whatever, and you always picked up the phone and you always helped me through, whether you had one eye open and one eye shut, or whatever. And I do appreciate your wife so much. for allowing you to be so much for my needy self so early on. But
it's so funny. Not long ago, so you and I, because now of all the stuff that I've got going on, the growth we've had in the company and expansion, then my role with the state and that sort of thing, and the growth of your team and all the stuff, we don't get to spend near the time together that we used to.
Yeah.
And for all the initial, squabbling we may have had through our growing pains, we've been very, very close for a very long time. And you are absolutely a member of our family. And so we haven't been able to get to spend the time together that we used to. And that's been a little bit of a struggle. I think we both kind of miss that. And you talk about Nunu and how great, like she's the one. I had to go on a trip to Boston for a work related thing. And I said, hey, do you want to go? And she's like, I can't go because of the kids or whatever. And she said, why don't you take Ashley? Y'all need to spend some time together. Y'all haven't been able to spend any time together. And, and y'all really need to take some time to connect and communicate, because it had not been happening near as much as it should, that we'd like for it to. And so just the understanding that she has, it's so cool. But that was a good trip. I was glad we got to do that.
Me too.
We always say we're going to make a point to get back and connect more. And then life gets in the way. And, we just, as we always have done, we just struggle along and do the best we can.
But as far as the team goes, Clint, I know what I had in you early on, and that was so important. And I wanted to be able to give that to somebody, because you weren't my first brokerage, or my first broker. And I was with some of those other, companies, transactionally, or whatever. And I knew that I needed more than that. As I learned from you, I wanted to be able to help people that did get their license and said, hey, I don't know what to do. That's kind of what started me wanting to have a team. There were people coming to me saying, hey, can I rack your brain? Or can you help me with this? Or how did you deal with this? Or, this and that. And, and I said, okay, well, obviously there's a bunch of realtors out there that need some help and guidance. And I had that with you, and I don't take that for granted, but there's a lot of people that didn't have that. And so, they came on to the team, and we all kind of grew together, and there were growing pains with that as well. I apologize to some of my first and second year team members, because I was learning like they were, but and to this day I learn from my team as much as they learn from me. We collaborate what works, what doesn't, and it's not that they come in and I'm like, oh, this is what you're doing wrong, and da-da-da-da. It's, okay, this didn't work, so let's talk about, what could you have done differently, or whatever. But it's with people that are in, the same industry, and so they're all learning and listening. So a conversation I have with an agent that she just went through this, there's an agent on the team that may have not gone through that, but will.
Right.
And then they're going to remember, oh yeah, this is, applicable to what, and so I just think that's so important, because yes, I did have that with you, because that was back in the day when you and I could spend, 60 hours a week with each other.
Yeah. You loved that too. I know you did.
I didn't really, but
most of them.
Like 50%.
All right. Batting 500 again.
Just kidding. But anyway,
we're consistent
no,
anyway.
I know. So. But you see what I'm saying. I mean, it really just is so awesome, because it's not even as a team leader what I'm bringing to my team. It's what the team brings for each other. We have trainings and we have meetings, and those are very different, because our trainings are, me training them on this and this, but the meetings really are, hey, let's talk about what did you deal with this week, or what was
more of a mastermind kind of a thing.
And what's so awesome is, Brandy on the team, Brandy Mallory, rock star, has this house, and we won't go into too many details, but it literally felt like an eternity. And she was just so open from start to end. She did a great job. It wasn't that at all. But, we don't always have easy ones, right? And so this one was,
I think I know the one you're talking about.
And we give nicknames to some of the, on the team. So, but when she closed it, literally, like we're all like applauding, and we just felt like we all had closed it, and just, so excited about it. But I love that. You don't get that just anywhere. And man, I love it, because you can cry with each other. Not you, because you hate crying. I equally don't like people to hug me. But we celebrate each other's successes, but also the trials and tribulations and struggles. And you just don't feel like you're by yourself. Because unfortunately with real estate, you can get in that, and you can get inside your own head. And then before you know it, you're looking at other people's social media, and you're like, oh my gosh, this person is killing it and this and that. And then you talk to them and then you find out, oh, it's not really what you thought.
Social media may not always be 100% indicative of real life,
But, I have some new agents that are like, I don't have anything right now. And I'm like, share my listings. And they're like, I can do that. And I'm like, absolutely. Yeah. Share my listings. Bring buyers. Do an open house on my listing. And they're like, oh my gosh. And they have. And they've had buyers come through an open house. It was my listing. And it was a win-win for everybody. I love it. I love it. And
so many times people say, why would you want to help somebody else do this? If you could help somebody else do it, you'd just be doing it yourself. And you see people all the time when there's coaching or whatever. They're like, well, if they were so good at it, you can make so much money. They would just be out making that money and not trying to sell me coaching on how to do this. And that mentality. But I understand the difference in that, because it is at some point. I had a closing a couple of years ago, a few years ago. I don't know. It's been 3 or 4 years ago. One of the last ones I had. And I got a check. It was like a $20,000 commission check, and I came in and I'm like, yeah. And there were some of the newer folks that are like, oh my God. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool. And I thought, what in the world is wrong with me? Like I have, but once you've done it a time or two, you understand that, and it's awesome and I'm always appreciative, but I've done it. Mm-hmm. But they've not. And so I get more excitement from them hitting those first time goals than I ever would for myself. And being able to help somebody reach their goals has been more rewarding for me than doing that. And the last thing that I want to mention, you talked about constantly striving and learning and growing. And we've had to realize, and me and you both, I think, and it was probably harder for me, that there is no destination. There is no, okay, I'm here now, I have arrived, and all is well. It's not that. It's a constant work in progress. It's a constant evolution in the business and in our business and in our growth. There's a book by Simon Sinek called The Infinite Game, and that's exactly what it talks about. Like, you're going to be really depressed if you think you're trying to get to a certain point, because you're never really going to get there. If you try to set a deadline or an end, when it ends, it ends. Yeah. Like that's when it's going to be over, when you're no longer here on this earth and you go wherever you wind up. Right. I know where I'm going. I know where you're going. But, people think that they got to get there and then they're going to get there and they're just going to be able to stop. And you can't. It's just, there is no end destination.
But success is addicting.
It is.
And my thing is to start out with something small. Like, celebrate your wins, no matter how big or small. Celebrate if you had a listing appointment and they were very open about interviewing with several agents and you got that listing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then celebrate getting past due diligence and the appraisal. And if you have an appraisal appeal and you win it, you work hard on it and they end up finding value, or your first closing. Celebrate your first million. I feel like you just said, we get so caught up on, but these people are doing this and this person's doing that, and stop. Yeah. Stop. Celebrate your successes, no matter how small, because that's what I used to do. Yep. And I still do, because it's still, whether it's $1 million or 3 million, or maybe it's, 10 closings for the year or 3, whatever. Yeah. But celebrate those small successes. And as you do that, I think something just radiates out of you, and then that's contagious. And then people want to work with you. They want to, have you on their, side when they're buying or selling, because you're not a Debbie Downer. Well, they took our offer, but this inspection report, let's get through it. And does that make sense? I just really feel like
there's a big difference in being realistic and being optimistic. And I'm guilty sometimes of being realistic.
Yes,
I do find myself sometimes thinking about where we're not rather than where we are, or thinking about what I haven't done versus what I have done. And that's a reality check for me sometimes, that people have to say, look backwards and look at what you've been able to do. And I am grateful. I don't ever want to give the impression that I am not grateful for any success that I've been able to have. Yeah. But I also am always thinking, man, but there's got to be a little bit more. And so trying to balance that is hard.
I think you've gotten better with that, but
I've worked on it, but it's still
but I just think hard. That, it is. And we're all going to have our own things, but
what you focus on, you get more of.
Yes.
So if you focus on your successes, you focus on your triumphs and not your downfalls or your setbacks, you're going to get more of those.
I try to be a
talking
very,
to
very,
myself currently.
And I try to be a very positive person, and I try tried to help the ones around me, whether it's friendships or, clients or whatever. Like, don't get discouraged if you've looked at 8 houses and you still haven't found the one, I would say 90% of the time my clients have gone back and said, man, I'm glad that first one that I really, really, really wanted didn't work out because I like this one better.
Yeah.
And they don't see it at the time. But I think as realtors, we need to have that same grace. Successful people attract successful people, and positive people attract positive people. And so just really do a little self-reflection if you're kind of hitting a wall or you're in a slump, and just remember, that we all have something every day.
Hard to be grateful and depressed at the same time.
Yeah, and I choose to be grateful and happy and positive. So
well,
anyway, but
I appreciate your positivity. I appreciate your gratefulness. I appreciate you sticking with me for all of these years and the times that you didn't smack me around when I drove you crazy. But I'm very proud of you. I'm very thankful for what you've meant to the company and to me and to my family. And
I feel the same way.
I will have you back on here soon. We'll do this a couple of more times, and it's been fun.
Yes.
So, all right. Talk to y'all soon.
Bye.